There's a recording of Prabhupada personally chanting and reading the introduction. It's amazing.
Oh, nice. All right, we should be live now. So, Hare Krishna, everyone. We're live classes in the temple for the morning program have started up again. So we're doing something a little different with the online classes because we want to keep them going. So we're going to start doing Bhagavad Gita, and we're going to do it later than the morning class so they don't clash. So got Atmanada Prabhu giving Bhagavad Gita class today. He's going to start with the introduction. Then Jai Sheila will do tomorrow, and a few other people who can only do online, so we'll try to keep those ones going, like Kishori is doing Monday. So at the moment we've got Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, Kishori, Atmananda, and Jai Sheila will be giving online Bhagavad Gita classes, and of course they'll be live on both Facebook and YouTube, and the recordings will be available. So take it away, Atmananda Prabhu. Thanks for giving class.
Thank you, Arjun, for taking care of organizing all of this. It's great support, encouragement.
I'm going to disappear now.
Okay, disappear. And we will appear. Prabhupada is always appearing. So, as Arjun said, I'm going to start with the introduction. And I want to say something about the mood in which Bhagavad Gita becomes most powerful and impactful and exciting, because Bhagavad Gita is exciting. It is the very essence of all the Vedic literatures, which we're going to hear from Prabhupada in the introduction momentarily. So if I think that, I know I've read Bhagavad Gita 1, 2, 10, 20, whatever number of times, I know about Bhagavad Gita. Even we're not consciously thinking of that, like that, the mind will say, oh, I've done this, I've heard this, I know this from before, and it creates a filter, pink, black, gray, a filter through which we consider Bhagavad Gita. And that filter is a limitation. That's what the mind tends to do. The mind tends to keep us from Krishna, from Prabhupada, from Krishna. Mind's duty, Maya's duty, Maya in the mind, and unless the mind is completely fixed in Krishna 24/7, that's where Maya is. That's her citadel. And her thankless task is to check us, block us from Krishna. Yoga Maya Samamvrita, that Yoga Maya is described in Bhagavad Gita, that curtain of Yoga Maya, of illusion and forgetfulness, that keeps us from appreciating. She's there to check and see if we're really serious. We know that the spiritual energy is more powerful than the material energy. We know the soul is not limited by matter, gross or subtle. We know that matter cannot limit spiritual realization, spiritual advancement, spiritual potency, the Sankirtan movement. Knowing it doesn't make any difference in the sense of mental or academic or intellectual. Knowing it, not gyan, academically, but vigyan, realized. That's beyond the mind. That's the nature of the self. Sat chit, that spiritual knowledge, awareness, consciousness, Krishna consciousness is the nature of the soul. And yet it don't be realized automatically. There's a process. We follow a very rigid, structured, progression steps, 9 processes in bhakti, or from Shraddha to Prem. Prabhupada says the individual endeavor has to be there. So we need to use our mind, control our mind, transform the mentality from I know Bhagavad Gita to I don't know Bhagavad Gita at all. Even I've read it tens of times, or I was brought up with it, whatever. I don't know Bhagavad Gita at all, because there's always something new in every sentence, every word. Prabhupada would listen to his own books. Why, just put on a show? Or give us the example. That's there. Prabhupada's not putting on a show. He's giving us an example to study his books. But he would relish hearing the books that he apparently wrote, which he said he did not write, Krishna wrote. He enjoyed. So there is unlimited potency, excitement, adventure, discovery, inspiration, and encouragement, and support in our struggle. And that's available when we choose to tell my mind, you don't know, you think I know, you think you know, or I think I know Bhagavad Gita. I don't know Bhagavad Gita at all. I've been going through regular study of Bhagavad Gita recently with a group, discussing it, and it's been extraordinary. I'm reading a book which I thought I knew, and I'm seeing every day, every time I study it and discuss with the group and answer particular visionary questions which are set up in advance. There's wow, I never saw that before. Have I read this book? Even if I read it, I don't know. So let's dive in. And what if anyone's here with me now? I'd like to have some way to check that. So in the chat, please put your name and where you are. Put your name and where you are. Let's see. Now, how can I enter a chat? I don't want a private chat anyway. I'm not going to take time to get diverted with technology. I don't know how to do it. I don't know how to do it. It says private chat, but that's not what I'm interested in. Oh, okay. Well, that is yes. Okay. Please share your name, location. All right. Hare Krishna from Theology Unleashed. Awesome. Okay. So what I'd like to start with is the prayer. I've actually got there's a recording of Srila Prabhupada personally speaking the Bhagavad Gita introduction. I've got a recording of it. Let's see if this works. And while Prabhupada is chanting, he starts with the Mangalacharana prayers, Om Gyan, etc. So he doesn't do the translation, we'll leave those out. So let's chant quietly along with Prabhupada. Probably best to keep yourself unmuted if you're not muted already. And then we'll get into the introduction.
Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. Sri Chaitanya Manovidyam Sthapitam Jena Bhutali Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Samadhikam Vandeham Sri Guru Sri Samadhakamalam Sri Guru Vaishnavanshyam Sri Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Sri Sakhanitan Syam He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Deenabandhu Jagatpate Gopeshu Gopika Kantya Radha Kanta Namaste Taptakanchana Gauragi Radhi Vrindavaneshwari Vikhavanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Panchakalpatarubhasya Kripa Sindhubhaivacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namo Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Introduction.
And he goes on from there. He reads the entire introduction. So I don't think there are others with us, or many in any case. You may be watching this recorded. Either way, my goal, I'd like to develop in that direction, is that we have this interactive. Now with Restream, we can't have speaking. I can't see each other as far as I know, but we can chat. So what I'm going to suggest and request is that whenever you have a thought about what we're reading, or a question, or realization, or a doubt, anything, put it in the chat, and we can interact like this. Prabhupada says, we're all interested in becoming detached, which means attachment to Krishna, simultaneously giving up our attachment to any kind of sense gratification, gross or subtle, family, sense objects, sensual pleasures, mental speculation, gyan, yoga other than bhakti yoga, or less than bhakti yoga. And Prabhupada says in the 15th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, this Bhagavad Gita, that at least one way, or he says the way to become detached is to discuss transcendental knowledge from bona fide authorities with other devotees. The way to become detached is to discuss transcendental coming from bona fide authorities with other devotees. Have you heard that before? Maybe not. I don't remember hearing that or reading that, although I'm sure I have. And that struck me. That struck me. And so many other places. Satatam kirtayan tamam. The devotees are always deriving great pleasure hearing and chant, discussing my glories. Also, so I like to make my classes more discussion. Now that it wasn't exactly the way Prabhupada did it, but he specifically said in many places like this in the 15th chapter to discuss with devotees. That's where hearing in this in that quote in the 15th chapter, he doesn't say hearing and chanting with devotees. He says discussing. He uses that word, discuss. Obviously, that's interaction. I share my realization or my question or my doubt. I get return. You share your realization, your question, or your thoughts about my question or doubt, and vice versa. And we build like that. It's an evolving development of knowledge and bliss eternally. That's what spiritual life is about. Hearing and chanting about Krishna together. Sankirtan together. So I make my classes more discussion oriented. And I find that practically people stay awake more. They become more interested because they're part of something. They're co-creating something together. And it calls us to become more present, more maybe confident or assertive in sharing what we might think isn't valuable. Oh, here's an older devotee, a senior devotee. Yes, the etiquette is there, and we are meant to hear from more realized devotees. At the same time, more realized devotees will want to encourage us to become more realized ourselves. So maybe you haven't heard this kind of approach before, but I find it very powerful, very practical. Not that I won't speak and share more, but that's my request. Whenever you come in, put your name and location, and it seems like one of yours. Okay. So yeah, and then at least if you're with us for any of the class time, finishing about 9:30, then put in anything comes up. Now I may not answer it right away. Don't think that you're interrupting. In fact, I will take it. I will be unhappy if you're not offering something, whatever. Even you think it's silly, foolish. That's another way that the mind tricks us. Oh, what I think, what I understand, my realization or my question, they're not worthy. And I say, hogwash. Arjuna was completely bewildered, and Krishna listened to him. That's the first thing Krishna did. He created sacred space by giving Arjuna the attention. Even though he was saying so many unreasonable things out of bewilderment, Krishna listened. He didn't just say, you be quiet, listen to me. I'm God. You should do this. You should listen. You should surrender to me. He says that at the very end. Now, yes, most of Bhagavad Gita is Krishna discussing, is Krishna instructing. And yet, Arjuna, it's a conversation. It's not a one-way street. Krishna consciousness is not a one-way street. It's not, in one sense, top-down. In one sense, it is top-down. But Prabhupada personally would sometimes ask, when he set up what he called the Ritvik system, so that he had representatives initiating as the officiating priest. when he described that to some of the senior devotees who he'd asked to take on that service of doing that on his behalf. He said, "Is that all right?" He asked them, "Is that okay?" Such humility, such um, creating a level playing field. Not that we think that we and Prabhupada are in any way equal, and yet he gave the example of doing that, not denying etiquette, not denying seniority, as is described in Nectar of Instruction. They're superiors spiritually, there are peers, and there are juniors. So we have the different, and we also have the oneness. So I think we can understand what I'm saying in that regard, that sharing your own realizations. And you listen to Prabhupada's lectures, he almost never said you. He would say we, or he would say, I'm in the conditioned state now, and in order to get out, he would speak like that, using I or we, not just the royal we. He was very inclusive. He made himself, he felt himself so humble. He was not high, putting himself up on the high and mighty platform, in the pulpit. Yes, he did that, and we know, because he's completely qualified. We accept his position. We honor that, and we listen to it. For whatever reason, we're far from that. So for me, I find it very effective. And if we had voice exchange, I would like to have everyone have a chance to read something, paragraph or two. So I'm going to read a little bit and then talk about it. And yeah, let's dive in. By Srila Prabhupada's mercy, and only by his mercy. So as Prabhupada, he said, okay, where are we? Bhagavad Gita is also known as Gitopanishad. It is the essence of Vedic knowledge and one of the most important Upanishads in Vedic literature. It is the essence of Vedic knowledge. The essence. Of course, there are many commentaries in English on the Bhagavad Gita, and one may question the necessity for another one. This present edition can be explained in the following way. Recently, an American lady asked me to recommend an English translation of Bhagavad Gita. Of course, in America, and when Prabhupada speaks this himself, he mentions the name of the lady, Charlotte someone. Of course, in America, there are many editions of Bhagavad Gita available in English. But as far as I have seen, not only in America, but also in India, none of them can be strictly said to be authoritative, because in almost every one of them, the commentator has expressed his own opinion without touching the spirit of Bhagavad Gita as it is. So Prabhupada's not any of them, none of them. We have Bhagavad Gita as it is, and there's nothing even near it. There are many, many editions by influential scholars, well-positioned politicians. Prabhupada mentioned Dr. Radhakrishna, very famous political figure, philosopher of India. And Prabhupada said he said, as an example of the commentator giving their own opinion, their own interpretation about him. He said, Dr. Radhakrishna says, when Krishna says, surrender unto me, he means the spirit, surrender unto it. He doesn't mean Krishna. He doesn't mean He doesn't mean me. He means the supreme spiritual essence within. Some of the greatest and most respected scholars and politicians, they have taken Bhagavad Gita for their own purposes. Prabhupada even said something like that about Mahatma Gandhi. He was using Bhagavad Gita, even though he said many wonderful things about it, and he had, of course, many good qualities, but he was using the Bhagavad Gita for political means, for political purposes. That is not Bhagavad Gita as it is. Yes, there's politics in Bhagavad Gita, but that's not the point. That's not the purpose. That's not the goal. That's not the reason we study Bhagavad Gita or apply Bhagavad Gita. We use it because we want to understand ourselves in Krishna consciousness, our relationship with Krishna, how to serve him, how to surrender. And it's all there. This book not only gives us the spiritual advice, direction, but it also gives us the practical tools by which to navigate the pandemics, some say, or the obviously the craziness of the mind, friend or foe, depending on how we use it. How to work out my relationship with my grandson, or your daughter, or your husband or wife. This is the perfect marriage counseling. It is a perfect counseling manual. Everything is here. Now, yeah, Prabhupada said that. Everything is in my books. In my life coaching service and couples coaching, I use this as the foundation, the basis for helping people to work out their relationships with themselves, with others, with their employers or their employees, with their friends, with their family members. And all these relationships, especially in Kali Yuga, they're fraught with conflict, resentment, rejection. We see it even amongst devotees. Getting along, not just superficially, but really being willing to understand each other and honor each other's even very differing opinions or attitudes about Krishna consciousness. We learn how to serve each other by listening and sharing in a respectful, gentlemanly, appreciative, encouraging way. That's what Prabhupada did perfectly. So, please share any thoughts or comments, doubts, questions. The spirit of Bhagavad Gita is mentioned in Bhagavad Gita itself. It is just like this. If we want to take a particular medicine, then we have to follow the directions written on the label. We cannot take the medicine according to our own whim or the direction of our friend. We like to do things our own way. Now, there's independence in spiritual life. Prabhupada advises us to become independently thoughtful. But that doesn't mean we're independent of Krishna. There's nothing that isn't independent of Krishna. That's not possible. So we adjust our mentality that I want to understand Prabhupada's mood, Prabhupada's teaching, Prabhupada's example for myself and serve him and Krishna and the Sankirtan movement in the best way according to my psychophysical nature. We need the help of superiors. Absolutely. And just like a child is dependent in the beginning. But if it grows and matures healthily, gradually it becomes an independent adult. An independent adult. And then when we as independent adults establish relationships, we can become interdependent, not codependent. We can become, in other words, we can share equally in a loving, progressive, encouraging, maturing, ever maturing relationship. My wife and I have been together for more than 30 years now, and we've been working on this. So when it's up between us, or about others, or situations, or difficulties, finances or otherwise, we've learned to listen to each other and honor that, and share our own feelings, thoughts, opinions, in a respectful, responsible way. It's all part of the science of self-realization. Because if we can relate progressively, positively with each other, other devotees, then there's society. Then there's society, community. Without that, it's just superficial. Oh, Haribol Prabhu, everything's fine. No, the mind is not fine. Our conditioned state is not fine. We're on, Prabhupada says, we're on we're like a drop of water on a leaf. It's tottering. Any moment can roll off. Little breath, puff of wind, little agitation from our spouse or child or employer, employee. Someone says something we don't like. Oh, so disturbing. We forget Krishna. We become resentful or angry or want to react back. That's our automatic default setting as conditioned souls. So we cannot take the medicine according to our own whim or the direction of a friend. So there's independence, there's dependence, and independence. Again, both. It must be taken according to the directions given by a physician. Similarly, Bhagavad Gita should be taken or accepted as it is, directed by the speaker himself. So who's the speaker of Bhagavad Gita? Yes, the speaker of Bhagavad Gita is Lord Sri Krishna. He is mentioned on every page of Bhagavad Gita as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Bhagavan. Of course, the word Bhagavan sometimes refers to any powerful person or any powerful demigod. And certainly here, Bhagavan designates Lord Sri Krishna as a great personality. But at the same time, we should know that Lord Sri Krishna is the supreme personality of God. In other words, Prabhupada saying Krishna isn't just a great person. He is a great personality, but that's not all. That's far from all. He is the supreme personality of Godhead. As is confirmed by all great acharyas, spiritual masters like Shankaracharya, Ramanujacharya, Madhvacharya, Nimbarka, Swami, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and many other authorities of Vedic knowledge in India. Now it's interesting that Prabhupada has explained in the beginning what is very, very basically, very simply, what is Bhagavad Gita, and the way to accept it, to receive it, to understand it. And very simple. You get a bottle of medicine, you you take it according to the directions on the label, and with guidance of a qualified physician. And now when I first read Bhagavad Gita, I had no clue who Shankaracharya was. who Madhvacharya was. I know, these are just names, like Greek to me, so to speak. I had no idea. So Prabhupada is speaking here. He's speaking to those who are aware of these names of different philosophies internationally, especially Indian or Vedic. So many Hindus who have heard these names. And many times you ask someone from India, what? Oh, here's the Bhagavad Gita. Here, take this Bhagavad Gita. Look at. Oh, yes, I know Bhagavad Gita. Oh, we know Bhagavad Gita. We know. And yet, do they worship the Sri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, solely and wholly? Often, if not usually, if not. So they haven't understood. Yes. Oh, yeah, we know Bhagavad. They don't know Bhagavad Gita at all. So the Prabhupada is speaking to people who at least externally have this level of knowledge. Obviously, either people brought up in the culture or in the West, where Prabhupada did his main preaching, people who are academically astute and know about different philosophies and names of acharyas. So Prabhupada presents his books in a way that anyone and everyone can understand and appreciate and get essential experience, a realization, which is the process of coming to Krishna. Essential realization based on knowledge coming from bona fide authorities. We have the parampara. So I'll just finish, finish this paragraph, and then we're going to talk about one very most special devotee whose disappearance day it is today, Srila Jiva Goswami. The Lord himself also establishes himself as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So it's not just the greatest authorities accept Krishna, promote Krishna, declare that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead without a second, but he himself is establishing it. And he is accepted as such in the Brahma Samhita and all the Puranas, especially the Srimad Bhagavatam, known as the Bhagavat Purana. Krishna Stu Bhagavan Swayam. Therefore, we should take Bhagavad Gita as it is, directed by the personality of Godhead himself. And Prabhupada goes on. Quite a long introduction. But I wanted to start with the introduction because there's so much here. Even before we get into the chapters. All right, so I'd like to read something about Srila Jiva Goswami from Prabhupada's books, specifically Chaitanya Charitamrita, Adi Leela, yes. So in Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita Adi Leela, chapter 10, there's description of the branches of the tree named Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Okay. So in the text, let's see, beginning of the chapter, actually a little later on, text 85. Translation: among these branches, Rupa and Sanatan were principal. Anupam, Jiva Goswami and others, headed by Rajendra, were their sub-branches. Purport. Srila Prabhupada. In the Gauraganadesh Dipika 195, it is said that Srila Jiva Goswami was formerly Vilas Manjari Gopi. So, Jiva Goswami was a Manjari Gopi. From his very childhood, Jiva Goswami was greatly fond of Srimad Bhagavatam. This child loved Srimad Bhagavatam. He later came to Navadvip to study Sanskrit, and following in the footsteps of Sri Nityananda Prabhu, he circumambulated the entire Navadvip Dham. After visiting Navadvip Dham, he went to Benares to study Sanskrit under Madhusudan Vachaspati. And after finishing his studies in Benares, he went to Vrindavan and took shelter of his uncles, Sri Rupa and Sri Sanatan. So, Anupam was Jiva Goswami's father. This is described in Bhakti Ratnakar. As far as our information goes, Srila Jiva Goswami composed and edited at least 25 books. They're all very celebrated, and they are listed as follows. 1. Hari Namamrita Vyakarana. 2. Sutra Malika. 3. Dhatu Sangraha. 4. Krishnarcha Deepika. 5. Gopala Virdhavali. 6. Rasamrita Sesha. 7. Sri Madhava Mahotsava. 8. Sri Sankalpa Kalpa Vriksha. 9. Bhavarta Suchaka Champu. 10. Gopal Tapanitika. 11. A commentary on the Brahma Samhita. 12. A commentary on the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. 13. A commentary on the Ujjvala Nilamani. 14. A commentary on the Yogasara Stava, etc. Now, I've heard, and I haven't had it authenticated in Prabhupada's books yet, but it may be here. He wrote 4 different commentaries on the Bhagavatam from different angles, mostly in relation to the different sandarbhas. After the 4 different commentaries on Bhagavatam, can you imagine? No. Must be boring, right? Repeating? No. After the disappearance of Srila Rupa Goswami and Sanatana Goswami in Vrindavan, Srila Jiva Goswami became the Acharya of all the Vaishnavas in Bengal, Orissa, and the rest of the world. I'll repeat that. Srila Jiva Goswami became the Acharya of all the Vaishnavas in Bengal, Orissa, and the rest of the world. And it is he who used to guide them in devotional service. In Vrindavan, he established the Radha Damodar temple, where, after retirement, we had the opportunity to live from 1962 until 1965, when we decided to come to the United States of America. So, not only was Jiva Goswami the greatest scholar of all time, but he also, partly because of that, he became the Acharya of all the devotees everywhere. Incredible, huh? Such an amazing personality. And obviously it wasn't because he was just a scholar. He was a pure devotee. He was attached to Lord Chaitanya from when he was a toddler. Lord Chaitanya visited his parents' house. And Lord Chaitanya gave the boy special mercy. And Lord Chaitanya knew who he was. And from that time, he always remembered Lord Chaitanya. And he became disturbed if he forgot. Fully Krishna conscious. I'm checking something here. Okay. Arjuna told me that I could see somewhere who else might be on this in the session, but I don't see anything. Anyway, I'll ask him about the technology later on. So continuing. So Prabhupada stayed in that temple that was established by Srila Jiva Goswami, Radha Damodar, Shishi Radha Damodar. And we know he also, the window, one of the windows from his quarters there in Vrindavan, looked out onto the samadhi of Rupa Goswami, one of the spiritual masters, mentors, guides, loving relatives of uncle, actually, of Srila Jiva Goswami. Very special place. Not an accident. Prabhupada had accommodation there for 3 years, from 62 to 65. When Jiva Goswami was still present, Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami compiled his famous Chaitanya Charitamrita. So Jiva Goswami was personally present when Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami wrote CC, compiled. Later, Srila Jiva Goswami inspired Srinivasacharya, Narottam Das Thakur, and Dukhi Krishnadas to preach Krishna consciousness in Bengal. Jiva Goswami was informed that all the manuscripts that had been collected from Vrindavan and sent to Bengal for preaching purposes were plundered near Vishnupur in Bengal. But later he received the information that the books had been recovered. And there's a whole amazing pastime there about how they were recovered, how the books were stolen and recovered. All right, someone's sharing. No, that's something else. Let's see. Sri Jiva Goswami awarded the designation of Kaviraj to Ramachandra Sen, disciple of Srinivasacharya's, and to Ramachandra's younger brother Govinda. While Jiva Goswami was alive, Srimati Janavi Devi, the pleasure potency of Sri Nityananda Prabhu, went to Vrindavan with a few devotees. Jiva Goswami was very kind to the Gaudiya Vaishnavas, the Vaishnavas from Bengal. Whoever went to Vrindavan, he provided with a residence and prasad. His disciple, Krishnadas Adhikari, listed all the books of the Goswamis in his diary. So it's not just that Srila Goswami was sitting on some big raised asana, some vyas, special throne and presiding. He was arranging and providing accommodation and good regular quality prasadam to whomever went to Vrindavan. It says whoever went to Vrindavan, he provided with a residence and prasad. Now there's some very strong accusations against Srila Jiva Goswami by the envious. Here Prabhupada continues. The Sahajiyas level 3 accusations against Srila Jiva Goswami. This is certainly not congenial for the execution of devotional service. The first accusation concerns a materialist who was very proud of his reputation as a great Sanskrit scholar and approached Srila Rupa Goswami to argue with them about the revealed scriptures. Srila Rupa Goswami and Sanatana Goswami, not wanting to waste their time, why spend time with people who, some puffed up Sanskrit scholar, they gave him a written statement that he had defeated them in a debate on the revealed scriptures. So they didn't care if someone else heard, oh, this scholar has defeated the greatest scholars. He must be the greatest scholar. They didn't care. The main thing was, how am I using my time and my energy for Krishna? So they obviously think they were discriminated between between spending time to defeat this man. Maybe there had been some value there. Lord Chaitanya and Prabhupada spent time defeating other people. And yet in this case, this particular case, Rupa and Sanatan decided not to waste their time. They had much more valuable service to do. They were writing books. They'd been empowered, instructed by Lord Chaitanya to spread the cult, the teachings of pure devotional service far and wide, and to reestablish the holy places in Vrindavan, build temples. So they were very, very busy. In fact, they only slept sometimes an hour or half an hour, and they would hardly eat anything, a little bit of buttermilk every day. They were so busy, they didn't even have time to eat and sleep. Not that they wanted to or they were attached to, they were so enlivened and happy and blissful. They couldn't, why sleep? Why waste time sleeping? That's an example that we aspire to gradually in time. So they gave him, Rupa and Sanatana Goswamis, they gave this puffed up scholar they signed a written statement that he had defeated them in a debate on the revealed scriptures. Taking this paper, the scholar approached Jiva Goswami for a similar certificate of defeat, but Jiva Goswami did not agree to give him one. On the contrary, he argued with him regarding the scriptures and defeated him. He completely devastated his arguments and humiliated him. Now, in Vedic times, normally, if they teach you philosophically, you accept them as your spiritual guides or spiritual master. I don't know what this scholar did. Certainly, it was right for Jiva Goswami to stop such a dishonest scholar from advertising that he had defeated Srila Rupa Goswami and Sanatana Goswami. But due to their illiteracy, But due to their illiteracy, the Sahajiya class referred to this incident to accuse Srila Jiva Goswami of deviating from the principle of humility. So here the Sahajiyas, in their bewildered condition, they have the gall to accuse Srila Jiva Goswami of deviating from the principle of humility. They do not know, however, that humility and meekness are appropriate when one's own honor is insulted, but not when Lord Vishnu or the acharyas are blasphemed. The sadhus, they don't know, and ignorant people, they don't know that humility and meekness are appropriate when one's own honor is insulted, but not when Lord Vishnu or the acharyas are blasphemed. Very important distinction. It's not all one. We don't always tolerate. Sometimes we fight fire with fire, according to this distinction. Not for oneself, but to glorify, to protect, to the name, the reputation, name, personalities, Lord Vishnu or the acharyas. It says one should not be humble and meek, but must act. I'll repeat that. In such cases, one should not be humble and meek, but must act. I assert that acting assertively in a case like this, like Jiva Goswami did, that is real humility and meekness. One should follow the example given by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Lord Chaitanya says in his Shikshastaka, Trinadapi Sunichena Tarorapi Sahishnuna Amanina Manadena Kirtaniyak Sadahari. Quote, one can chant the holy name of the Lord in a humble state of mind, thinking oneself lower than the straw on the street. One should be more tolerant than a tree, devoid all sense of false prestige, and should be ready to offer all respects to others. In such a state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly, end quote. So, nevertheless, Prabhupada continues, when the Lord was informed that Nityananda Prabhu was injured by Jaga and Madai, he immediately went to the spot, angry like fire, wanting to kill them. Thus, Lord Chaitanya has explained his verse by the example of his own behavior. So Lord Chaitanya's behavior, in this case of being angry like fire, ready to kill, physically kill Jaga and Madai, is, Prabhupada says, is an explanation of Lord Chaitanya's own verse, by the example of his own behavior. One should tolerate insults against oneself, but when there is blasphemy committed against superiors, such as other Vaishnavas, one should be neither humble nor meek. This came up last time we gave Bhagavatam class last Wednesday. The question was raised by Krishnendu Prabhu. He said, if we hear devotees being insulted or offended, and no one does anything about it, should we speak up or not? So according to this, we should definitely speak up. Now, that may be very difficult. It's not exactly, might not be considered PC or humble or meek. But when there's blasphemy committed against superiors, such as other Vaishnavas, one should be neither humble nor meek. One must take proper steps to counteract such blasphemy. Hare Krishna. This is the duty of the servant of a Guru and Vaishnavas. This is the duty of the servant of a Guru and Vaishnavas. Anyone who understands the principle of eternal servitude to the Guru and Vaishnavas will appreciate the action of Sri Jiva Goswami in connection with the so-called scholar's victory over his gurus, Srila Rupa and Srila Sanatana Goswami. So there's two other accusations that the Sahajas make, but it's time to finish up now, so let's see. I hope you've all gotten something from this, and if you want to make some comments later on, if you're not listening to this live, if you're on now, please put your name in and your location in the chat. And if there's no one there, that's fine too. Maybe enter some chat, some question or some thought or realization on the YouTube channel or on Facebook, wherever that's possible. And be encouraged to tell your mind, no, you don't know Bhagavad Gita. And approach it in a spirit of discovery. I don't know about it. It's always new and fresh. It's exciting. Nava Yoganam, like Shyam Sundar Prabhu used to say. When they went to go to Prabhupada's room in the morning, when they were turning the door handle, going to Prabhupada's darshan room, they didn't know what was going to happen, what was coming up next, what Prabhupada and Krishna would manifest. Anytime, as soon as they opened the door, what was next? There was magic in the air, so to speak. Okay, by the grace of Srila Prabhupada, we can be connected with that magical, much more than magical, the mystical, the spiritual Sat Chidananda, eternally ever expanding awareness, consciousness, progress, and joy in his service, in the service of the Sankirtan movement. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srila Jiva Goswami's Disappearance Day ki jai. Hare Krishna.